I was visiting a relative's house for a while over the summer, who lived pretty far from where I'm from. I was sleeping on a room in the second floor, and really late in the middle of the night, at about 3 a.m., if I had to put a time to it, I woke up feeling really thirsty, so I rolled out of bed, and to my surprise were two of my aunts. One who had a pitcher of water, and the other one who was holding a glass. For some reason, maybe because I was so young and because they lived in the same house at the time, I didn't really think anything of it. They asked me if I wanted a glass of water, and I guess I thought it was weird enough because I remember saying no thanks and rushed out to the door. I went downstairs, and as I reached the bottom of the stairs, my aunt, one of the ones who was upstairs, comes out of the kitchen, which is on the opposite side of the room, and has a glass of water in her hands. She asked me what I'm doing up so late, and I told her I was really thirsty. I didn't tell her about the ghost, demon, spirit, whatever I saw upstairs. She said the glass of water was for my grandmother, but offered it to me instead, and I drank it. I don't remember what happened after that, but I essentially went back upstairs and went to sleep. I guess the two people I saw in my room when I woke up were spirits or ghosts playing tricks on me. Okay, you asked for the wooden people and you got them. Don't blame me if you have nightmares later. This tale has been told many times by a friend. It occurred way back when he and his younger brother were just kids and not wasted, they insist. Rod, let's call him, and his brother Todd were in the woods one afternoon when they were out to hang out. The woods are pretty big and they were pretty far out there. Rod is not one to make up stories, and neither is Todd. They both have sworn for years to witnessing the following events. Apparently, they happened upon a clearing. In the clearing was a house. The door opened and an old couple were standing there. The old woman said, "Would you like some cookies?" Note, never accept food from a stranger, especially a wooden person. As Rod says it, he realized right there that their shit wasn't right. Upon closer inspection, they appeared to be carved out of wood and were one-dimensional. I kid you not. Oh yeah, the wooden man was smoking a cigar. That could be pretty dangerous if you're made out of wood. Obviously unwilling to accept the cookies from wooden folks, Rod and Todd took off. As they ran past the house, it became clear that it was only the wooden front of a house, sort of like a stage set. Rod and Todd later tried to find the wooden people again, but never relocated them. And that, my friends, is the story of the wooden people. My verdict, which helps if you know Rod, 100% true. How could you even come up with something like that? Rod has no imagination to speak of. I assure you that he did not make it up. As for Todd, he doesn't like to talk about it these days. I don't know about you, but I think a couple of wooden people on an island would be pretty sweet. I woke up in the middle of the night and my grandfather was standing in the doorway of my room. Years ago, it was really strange. My grandfather wasn't dead and he was visiting. However, he wasn't staying at our house that night. He was staying several miles away. I immediately had a sense of fear, so I looked away. I got the courage to turn back around and look, and I realized that I was just being stupid. The image of my grandfather was simply created by my lack of night vision and a bunch of white paper on my door. So I went back to sleep. Only problem was that when I woke up the next day, there was no white paper anywhere near my door. I swear by this story. About 3 years ago, when my nephew was 2, he would talk about the man he could see standing in the hallway at the top of the stairs in his house. He seemed genuinely frightened, and it freaked my sis-in-law out. He referred to it a few times, then just stopped as he got a bit older. Then about a year ago, my other nephew, his brother, mentioned the man standing in the hall with no eyes. It was only mentioned once, then never again, but it was enough to spook us silly. Anyone else's children talk of such things? Never really had any paranormal experiences, but either way, one night I had a nightmare about some kind of demon thing was sitting in front of me asking me questions like a therapist would. Don't remember what he was asking. Anyways, fast forward like 5 minutes into the dream, he asked one question that caught me off guard. I get chills remembering this shit. He asked if I was sleeping tight. I said, "What?" Then he proceeded to scream like a little girl was being raped. I woke up thinking, what kind of fucking dream was that? I tried to move, but I couldn't. I could not even move an inch. I couldn't even speak nor even utter a whisper. The only thing I could do was move my eyes. At this point, I was scared shitless. I had this horrible feeling that someone was behind my back doing this to me. My TV was on too, and I remember that night I turned it off before going to sleep. After like 30 seconds of suffering, it stopped. After that, I slept with the lights on. Here's one. I had a good friend die when I was 10. We'll call him John. He died pretty tragically too. He was hit by a car literally right in front of my house when he was chasing a ball that bounced into the road. Fast forward 7 years, I'm babysitting my little sister and she's playing outside. I'm on the porch swing reading and she's shooting hoops on a little Tykes hoop. The ball bounces out into the road and I see her yell, "Don't go after that ball, John!" Freaked the shit out of me. She never knew about John. I asked her who John was and she said that he would play with her sometimes outside. My unexplained story. I was almost 17 and worked at a horse stable. There was this guy, Chris, who worked there. He was 22. He trained the horses there, had a little crush on him. We got to know each other and talked every day. It was like that for a few months. One day he was in a car accident. He was on life support, no brain activity at the hospital for a few days before his family made the choice to pull the plug. The funeral was very sad. They played his specific song at the service. The next day I was in the barn working. We had a radio in there so we could listen to music, but I had it off that day. All of a sudden it turns itself on and starts playing Chris's song. Right from the beginning of the song, I freeze in shock. It's a very hot, humid summer day and I was getting chills. It's playing his whole song, then it just turned itself off again. I ran up the bar for a few minutes, calmed down and went back in. The radio had not only been off, but unplugged. The radio never did that again. I took it as Chris's way of saying goodbye. Track attack. This is a very short one and kind of funny, as well as odd. When I was a kid, I was allowed to stay up almost as late as I wanted to over summer vacation. I loved to stay up to watch movies they put on late in the middle of the night, especially horror movies. One night I was watching one of those old Christopher Lee as Dracula movies. It was scaring the crap out of me and I couldn't take it anymore, so I went to turn the channel and see if anything else was on. I clicked the rotary dial to the next station and the same movie was playing, without any break of continuity between the two channels. I clicked the dial again to another station. Same movie. Clicked, same movie. Click, same movie. Every time I turned the dial, there was Dracula staring at me in the face as he sucked on some woman's jugular. At the time, we only had 5 stations and they were all playing the same movie in exact synchronicity to the frame. I started to freak out, so I pushed the power button in to shut it off. Nothing happened. It wouldn't turn off. I played with the power switch 1 or 2 more times and grabbed the plug out of the wall. It finally shut off and I went to bed. I mean, I doubt there was anything wrong with the TV set because it never acted up before or after that incident. Just remembered something while reading through all these stories. Me and a friend of mine were messing around with the mic on my computer, recording stupid, immature stuff, and at one point we both said, "Hello." Upon listening to the recording again, we heard a female voice say, "Hello," right after my friend and I did. It was probably 12 midnight and everyone else in the house was asleep. It was like 2 a.m. I took my clothes off and went to sleep. A minute later, something hit me at the head. It was one of my socks. When I take them off, I throw them in the corner of my room, so someone threw it back at me. There was no one in my room. I was alone 100%. May not sound so scary, but it was for me. Nightmare time. I had this one when I was very young, not older than 5 or 6, but I still remember it vividly. I was in bed, starting to nod off in the evening. My parents had left my door opened as I wasn't too fond of the dark. Lights streamed through. It was still only 8 or 9 or 10 p.m., and they were still up and about, so I laid there and placidly observed the illuminated doorway, listening to my parents' movements and chatter and getting ready to be hustled off to dreamland. Then the door slowly swung shut, because there was someone behind it. The person was over 6 feet tall easily. He was dressed in what looked like a tuxedo. That was unusual. He also appeared to be wearing a scuba mask. It seemed kind of funny until I looked closer and realized that the mask was actually part of his face. It was fused on somehow. His nose was covered. His eyes were very, very wide and glistening and bloodshot. He didn't seem to have any lips. He had a death's head grin. He stood motionless for a moment, then he noticed me. His eyes widened almost impossibly. He opened his mouth and let out an inhuman shriek so terrifyingly loud that it hurt my ears and sounded distorted to me. In one bound, he leaped onto my little bed, which came crashing down under his weight. Still screaming incredibly loudly, he closed his hands upon my throat. And that's when I woke up, yelling at the top of my lungs. After establishing with my dad that it was, in fact, just a bad dream, I was able to go to sleep for the night. But the funny thing is, my ears were still ringing from when the thing behind the door had screamed. The weirdest thing happened to me today. I was getting rid of some old DVDs. Holy shit, remember Four Lines? Such a good movie. And I noticed there were 5 DVDs on one of the shelves in front of me. It made me think of The Long Face. I laughed at myself, but as I went to put the DVD I was holding into the bag, I saw a face. On the bag, I mean. The 2 clips looked like eyes, and the opening looked like the mouth. Yeah, laugh if you must. I got 2 DVDs out of the bag and put them on the shelf. The face was gone after that. I probably knocked the bag into a different position. One night when I was maybe 10 or 12, I had trouble falling asleep. My bedroom was the entire top floor of our house, with my bed and such being on the left side and the storage closets and the play area being on the right. I was lying in bed when I heard a noise from the other side of the room, and I see a rocking horse begin to rock. It was sitting just outside one of the storage closet doors. It proceeded to rock its way halfway across the room and stopped dead under the ceiling light. At this point, I was freaked out and just buried my head under blankets and never peeked out again until morning. One time when I was really young, about 7, I remember sitting in my room eating an English muffin. I had 2 and didn't feel like eating the second one, so I didn't know what to do with it, so I stared at it for a while. I took it with both hands and threw it up towards the ceiling. I didn't look up while throwing, I just did. Anyways, it didn't come back down. I looked up all over the floor. No muffin. So a few minutes passed and my mind drifted on to other things. I carried on doing something else. I don't really remember what. Then during an idle moment, I just kind of stared at the floor. The muffin fell into my lap. It scared the shit out of me. It was still warm and buttery. This goes way back when I was a teeny bopper. A tape recorder was used in this one too. My friend and I decided to go to the graveyard and try it out. We found a fresh grave and it was the grave of a priest. We put the tape recorder on the grave and I asked what heaven was like, and then let the tape run for a bit on the grave. Mind you, there was no wind really, so it was a good night for it. On the way back to my place, we both had a strong feeling that we were being followed. Paranoia? When we got back, we played the tape. After the part of what was heaven-like, we heard the most hideous scream, and it was loud. Both of us freaked out. To this day, it kind of bothers me. Once I was sleeping with my shirt off and a spider crawled across my chest. I leapt out of bed so fast that it passed out immediately. Eventually, I went back to bed after I found the spider and killed it with a shoe. It was a big fucker. Not quite huntsman spider, but it was big enough. I woke up later that night at about 3 a.m. feeling pressure on my chest. I opened my eyes and I thought I saw my mom hovering over me. The thing was, she was levitating over me, and she had eyeless sockets and looked dead. I lashed out at her and squirmed back towards the bedpost, swinging violently and saying, "What the fuck are you doing?" The image disappeared. Probably not a ghost, but there were mass graves found in my neighborhood where black slaves were put hundreds of years ago, and there were other stories about their ghosts around. I never believed them, and I forgot them all. I remember when my grandpa had terminal cancer when I was 12 years old, apparently. My family knew he was close to the end because they were staying in my grandparents' house, as was I. I was still kind of a kid, so I suppose they were protecting me from the truth. As my cousin, who was 13, and I thought for sure that he was going to pull through. My grandpa and I had a unique relationship, as my mom had me when she was 15 years old and I never had a father. To me, he was always kind of a father figure. One night, my cousin and I went to sleep. We had 2 beds in the guest room now. Normally I slept like a rock at the point in time. I'm 22 now and can hardly sleep nowadays, but for some odd reason, we both woke up at the same time in the middle of the night. I still remember the time on the clock. 1:34 a.m. We both kind of looked at each other and laughed, as it was kind of weird that we both woke up at the exact same time. We both went back to sleep. The next morning, when we both got up and went downstairs for breakfast, we were told that my grandpa had passed away that night. Later on, I found out the time. 1:34 a.m. I live in Ontario and our family has a cottage in Manitoulin Island. When I was a kid, our family's cottage and our grandparents' cottage were right beside each other, and we were connected by a path through the woods and also a road. As a kid, I always hated taking the path through the woods, so I would always take the road. The cottages were very close. It was less than a minute walk. One night, while walking back to our cottage, I was using the road to get back, and I thought I heard something moving around close to me in the woods. At first, I didn't really think of it because there was always animals around us. I stopped for a minute to try and hear, and out of nowhere, I heard the worst sounding laugh I've ever heard in my life. I didn't see anyone, but it seemed to be getting closer. I've never run so fast in my life. When I got to the cottage, when my parents asked me what was wrong, and after I explained what had happened, they laughed and said it was probably my grandpa trying to scare me. The next morning when I asked him, he swore it wasn't him. And a few years ago, after he had passed, my dad and I were talking about it, and he told me he had gone to my grandpa and asked if it was him because of how scared I was, and he swore it wasn't. To this day, I hate walking around there at night. When I was little and living back in California, my room had one of those closets with 2 sliding doors. However, both of these doors were actually mirrors, reaching from the floor to the ceiling, and the way my room was set up, my bed was directly across the room from them. One summer night, I could not sleep. I just laid in my bed waiting for some kind of tiredness to come, but it never did. Thinking laying in a different position would help, I rolled onto my side and looked into the mirror, seeing the reflection of myself in my bed, but also the image of a large black cat sitting by my feet. Now, when I say large, I mean large. Sitting up with the tail around its paws, it was about 3 feet tall. I couldn't see anything specific like eyes or whiskers, but the ears and the outline of the face, it was clearly a cat. At this point, I sat up and looked at the foot of my bed. of course, nothing was there. I looked back into the mirror and the image of the cat was still there. It hadn't changed. Figured something was casting a shadow. I looked to the wall my bed was up against, but there weren't any posters or stuffed animals to make a shape like that. Looking back to the mirror again, I was startled to find the cat wasn't there. Looking around at everything reflected in the mirror, I couldn't find it, and thankfully so. Pretty much every night from then on, I didn't look toward my closet in case it came back. I didn't feel sick or scared when I saw it that time. I just didn't, and I still don't like the idea that something's keeping me company. Well, just to add something to the thread, it's not much of a story, but anyways, there was a really nice old lady who lived downstairs from me when I was young. She gave me a stereo one day, which was nice since I was thinking about getting one. And it was pretty nice, got good sound and all. A few months later, I started noticing some weird stuff going on with it, like it would switch stations by itself to a station with a good song coming on, and then turn itself on when I came into the room. This was an old stereo with a big switch to turn it on and off and a heavy weighted dial. I never worried too much about it, even though I'd seen the switch flip and the dial turn. I just told it thanks, since it was doing me a favor. It stopped doing things shortly after the old lady died. I have a suspicion it was just hanging out with me while I kept an eye on her, and once she left, it had no reason to be around anymore. Maybe it was her husband, who knows. I had a very upsetting experience with the spirit of a boy of about 4 to 5 who used to walk the house where we live. During the day, he would just appear in a room, never moved or made a sound, but always looked sad. My 2-year-old could see him too, as he tried to talk to him and give him toys. When we played in the garden, we would see him stand at the window watching, and if we had been out, we would come home to him waiting by the front window. I used to feel very sad for him, as if like he wanted to join in and needed a cuddle. At nighttime, it became unbearable. It was the only time he made a sound, but we never saw him. He would run up and down the stairs, sobbing loudly. My 2-year-old said to me one day while I was in the kitchen, "Where's Alan's mommy?" When I asked him who Alan was, he said the boy there and pointed to the hallway. Then he said Alan is sad he lost mommy. After 6 months, we got a local priest to come to the house. He said that 30 years ago, a young mom and her son died in the house in a fire while they were sleeping, and that he could sense the boy's spirit couldn't rest as he was separated from his mommy. The priest blessed the house with holy water and said a prayer for the boy, asking for God to reunite them. After that, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, and the priest said the boy had found the way to his mother and was now at rest. It was the most emotional thing I've ever experienced. My mom and I just sat and cried, and we never seen or heard the boy again. When I researched it on the internet, he was called John Allen Taylor. Shortly after I started working for the federal government, my father got sick and my mother stayed home with him for the day. This was 2 days before my 22nd birthday. I was walking down the hallway to my office when I saw a woman way down at the other end of the hallway waving at me. It seemed like the closer I got, the further away she got, and I couldn't see who it was. I finally decided to give up and go back to my desk. I had been sitting there for a short period of time when I felt someone kiss me on the cheek. I jumped up and turned around, but there was no one there. Someone asked me what was wrong, and I told them. They said I'd imagined it. When I got home, my mother told me that night that my favorite aunt had passed away. I can only assume that she came to say goodbye to me and wish me a happy birthday while I was at work. Even now, as I write this, I can tell she is here with me. Her name is Dorothy, and I miss her very much. Not really a ghost story, more of a sad story and touching. I was 7 years old when my aunt died of breast and lung cancer. I loved her a lot, and whenever I went over to her house to visit, she'd always treat me with love and care. But when I found out she had cancer, I was freaked to death. I skipped an entire week of school just to visit her in the hospital because I thought that if I was there, she'd get better. Well, one night we were all at my other aunt's house when my parents came back and said that she had died. I started bawling, and before anyone else in the house, I was so sad. For about 1 week, I was bawling my eyes out all the time. When all was calmed down, about a week later, my dad had to go to work. He had to drive trucks around and leave for weeks at a time. He came back with a trainee who slept downstairs. Well, I was still hurting from the death of my most loved aunt, and I felt something touch my shoulder, like a hand. When I turned around, no one was there, but my dad's trainee was sitting on the couch watching me. I asked him if he saw anyone. He said no. But then I heard a whisper saying, "I will always love you, Keter." I thought it was in my head, but I would never have been able to bring me to be able to even think those words. I don't know, but I think it was my aunt.